Hello everybody, welcome to the energy tips for week 29. That is the 13th till the 19th of July 2020 in this epic time. I'm calling this energy tip video Fire Baptism. So yes guys, so we are heading into a really confusing time, very chaotic time right now. You can feel this within yourself, you're confused, you don't really know what or whom to trust anymore. It's overwhelming. So it's really difficult to make sense of events, be it in your smaller bubble or in the bigger sort of macro bubble collectively. It's really difficult to get through these times right now if we don't have a plan. So we're going to talk a little bit about this here in these energy tips. This requires us, though, to deal with a few things, namely things that have to do with our emotional processing, that have to do with how we are dealing with, this uncertainty, how we're dealing with the things that are kind of inflammatory, that are growing, that are repressed, that we don't want to see, that we want to avoid, that we are tired of facing, and so forth. So there's an inflammatory sort of notion right now that you can wonderfully observe, probably with most of the people here in the world. It's like a pressure cooker. And we need to get out of this blaming and finger pointing and, looking on the outside for solutions, because this is something that I can tell you already. That's not where you're going to get this sense from. You're going to have to wake up and watch yourself and uncover these unprocessed or unaware, unconscious self-sabotage mechanisms that you have, maybe because you were conditioned that way, maybe your family has taught you that in a way as the only way to deal with things, maybe because you've believed in certain things, had unchecked mindsets and sort of blind faith in certain things. But all this is uncovered right now, and so you're going to have to really deal with the awareness that a lot of the things that you thought were certain, or that were safe, or that were providing you with some kind of strategy for the future, that they're falling away. And you guys are very well prepared. And I want to point this out here, that this reality check right now is something that you have been preparing for, okay? So it is very important right now that you understand that looking at things the way they are is your biggest power. Because if you choose to continue using these old coping mechanisms and, the avoidance and believing in things that are not even real, or better say true, all right, you're going to feel betrayed. You're going to feel left behind. So that is basically sort of the bottom line of reality check, is to face your fears, but more so really allow this to be there, so that you even know what you're dealing with, so that you know what you're facing, and so that you can make a plan, that you can develop a strategy, that you can come up with creative solutions. Most of you are not even aware yet of what the problem is. All right. So part of that is shadow clearing, and we've done a lot of this in the last week. But that's not where this stops. There's also a huge opportunity in these times. This is fortune time here this next week. And I really want you, or not want you, but I would like to invite you to, instead of going into like, oh, how bad everything is, and, resisting sort of this antipathetic feeling inside of you that you don't want this to be, and that you just want the old back, to shift this around and set yourself up for growth instead. All right, find your passion, to find your cause. Okay, become your own energy factory. Know what you are doing things for, and what is it that it's making it worth for you. Okay, whatever that is. All right, so this is now the time here that we are realizing when we do this reality check that we have to regroup, we have to downsize, we have to work with these creative solutions, whether it's the uncertainty about schools, about our jobs, about our economic systems, about our pensions, about no matter where you look, the future of our relationship, perhaps, right, where we want to live, we're going to have to look at what is feasible now. So 6 months ago in January, I said, okay, now's the time, guys, don't miss the train here. You can determine things, where you want to live, whom you want to live with, what kind of job, and so forth. And I created a bit of a sense of an urgency. Well, now it's progressed, all right? There are certain waves, okay? And I'm not talking about corona waves. I'm talking about waves of changes. There's mechanics to change, okay? And we are now in the middle of the second wave, which is the wave where, the outer environment no longer offers a trustworthy structure for us. So we have to resort to our own self-reliance, to our own self-selection here, and understand that we are the ones responsible for this now. So this is a wonderful time in this next week, guys. And I really want you to understand that, the times ahead here, those next 6 to 12 months, they really require you to wake up and also to educate yourself on micro and macroeconomics, because we are heading into an unprecedented occurrence here, okay? That this was there in different ways and different expressions of the last 500 years, but it is now more or less compounding, it's compressed, it's all coming together, all right? Whether it's the collapse of our financial systems, of our productivity and our governments, or the collapse of certain power structures in the world and social values and so forth, and not to scare you, but to prepare you, because when you actually process this, you are no longer as shocked, and when you're not shocked, you don't go into your autonomous nervous reaction, you don't go into your sabotage, into your coping anymore. So please forgive me if this is uncomfortable when listening to me with this intensity that I have in my voice, because it wouldn't be ethical for me to tell you guys that, if we just all hold hands and sing Kumbaya together, it's going to be fine. That wouldn't be ethical. Why is this not ethical? Because what I'm telling you here to wake up to is already reality. I'm not talking about, some vision or some prediction or anything. This is not a prediction, guys. This is already going on. Educate yourself. Okay? So I'm going to pull you through the most uncomfortable part of this here today, when looking at these different waves of economic restructuring and what we can do. And I'm going to be extremely practical with you here. And I know some of you don't even have big financial choices, and some of you have money, and some of you have a lot of money. And you all have different kinds of problems, okay? But I want to just give you a few options here to start the process, of developing a strategy, okay? These collective energies that are there right now are extremely fiery. They're extremely unprocessed, okay? And so this distrust in leadership, whether it's the corona situation, whether it's the economy, currencies, and so forth, what we see in the news is basically a big, I don't know a better word right now, but it is fake news. But not because of political parties, but because, the media has taken on its own agenda, and that is selling the news. This didn't used to be that way. I mentioned this many months ago. Okay, the propaganda comes in play when the agenda is no longer, providing people with the reports of what is actually going on, but when like right now, 75% of all articles that you see out there are paid articles. All right, this war here that is going on in social media and media is much bigger than you think it is. because 78% of all your choices that involve money and transfer are being made on your handheld, on your phone, or on your computer. This is where the new market place here in this sort of second age of industrialization takes place in the digital world. So I want you to understand that every time you go online, every time you order something online, every time you research something, and so forth, your data is being collected, and that is being used to sell news, to sell products, to sell things back to you. And you all know this, that if you do one search, for, let's say you search for a bike or whatever, and you go on any social media site, all of a sudden you get advertisements for bikes. All right. So I'm not creating sort of a doom and gloom scenario here. I'm just trying to open your eyes for what already is. All right. So these energies that I'm reporting about, they're already there. And in this week here, we're heading into a purge situation. So that's energetic. That's me reading out the collective field, all right? And for some of us, this means to go back into lockdown. Obviously, I live in Florida, so for us here, that's already new reality again. Okay, some of you are just now opening back up, so you have a slightly different timeline, but the waves go in the same way, all right? So big events always come in three waves in general, right? And that's why we have to learn to stay in the present moment, to read the signs so that we know where we're at. And if you can locate yourself, if you know where you're standing, if you know what your stance is, then you don't need to be afraid of the unknown. I've mentioned this in Truth Talks and Truth Self-Talks, how the fear of the unknown, the fear of the future is really what allows darkness to creep in. So when we are prepared in the sense that we know what it is that we will have to face in a certain, say, period of time, it will change our perception of things, all right, especially when we educate ourselves with this. And our perception, as you guys all know, determines our energetic state. And because it determines the perspective that we have, and the perspective determine the beliefs and the mindsets behind things. So if you interpret this as apocalyptic, what I'm telling you right now, then you're missing the point. I have a personal opinion about this within the next 6 to 12 months. All right, as far as our financial systems, government systems, social systems is concerned, I am expecting a massive restructuring. And I see right now that many of us are not really standing in that reality yet. All right, so again here, don't feel scared. Let me just walk you through what we can expect here financially, because that is how our world sort of ticks and how they will affect us. Now, I don't need to tell you that, things can get worse and that people can lose more jobs and so forth. I'm trying to just open your eyes for what already is. The economy works in four major layers. One is us, that's the productivity, the workers, okay? We produce the work, we produce the power, if you will. We are the engines, okay? And then we have the corporation levels, that's where the profits are being made, that's where, if you organize this all well and have great ideas, you can make profits. And then we have the financial sector. The financial sector is the part that mediates the profits and, sort of how the governments can work with this, okay? That we have a financial market, we have a real estate market, we have commodities, and most of those are being traded in some way here in the money markets, okay? Now, the financial sector is something that people call Wall Street or stock market, but it's a bit more complex than that. But this is typically what we trust in. Okay, so when we have assets of any kind, we either have to take a loan from a bank, or we keep our savings, or we allow our bank to work with our money so that we can get returns. So the financial market here, the financial sector, creates returns on profits. And then we have the governmental layer, the national layer. So the governments really finance everything here through, our productivity, through the profits that are being made, and especially the returns that are being created on the stock market. I don't want to go deeper into this, how this happens, but I want you to understand that the bailouts and the stimulus that it was sort of emitted here into our countries, 95% of that went to the financial sector, which is why we are not seeing this in, NASDAQ and Dow Jones rates. Okay, I want you to understand that we do have all these defaults already. So these three waves in which a financial system collapses and has to be restructured are observed in the default of these different layers of the economic system in a country. That is first the productivity, there's the employment. Currently in the United States, employment is down by 20%, expected to be 40% within the next 6 months. Okay, then we have the defaults in corporate debt. Okay, 20% of them are already classified as risky, meaning the banks know that they're not going to get that money back. All right, we have an 85% default on rents and mortgage payments for businesses, which is really significant. You really have to understand that. So the value or the stock of a company can still be very high, but their cash flow can be extremely tricky. And this is now basically where we need to pay attention, because the stock market, the real estate market, and the commodities market, they are the places where we can see the first signs of a larger financial collapse. So governments, or nations such as the United States or the European countries can typically handle fluctuations in productivity and corporate earnings, corporate profits. It gets more difficult when the financial sector starts to wobble, and this is what we've seen in 2008. Is also the reason why the governments are now supporting the financial sector. Okay, but this is part of the gaslighting. This is part of what creates sort of consumer optimism, and as long as the stock markets go up, everything is fine. The problem that is arising here within the next 6 to 12 months is that there is not enough money coming back into the system from these lower levels. People can't work with more lockdowns, with more restrictions, and certain benefits for people, unemployment benefits and stuff like this, running out. We are looking at a drastic escalation of things, especially here in the United States. This will play out a little differently in all of your countries because you have different social structures. But here in the United States, besides, some of the elevated healthcare cost and so forth, the biggest issue is a really insufficient social structure and social security. So what we will see is a lot of people who are not just losing their jobs, who are losing their homes, and who are literally being driven into a financial ruin. And we've talked about this before. There is, of course, the discussion, which is sort of an ethical discussion, really. If the lockdowns and all that, the damage that comes through that, if that outweighs the damage that can come through corona infections. So I leave this up to you to judge this. But the point is that through the corona situation, everything that was already there, that we could already see developing since the early 2000s, has now been triggered, which means all this talk that you hear probably on the business news and so forth about the financial collapse has now become sort of more real. It was more like a conspiracy theory before, and people wouldn't really listen to those experts who understand macroeconomics. Now these numbers are actually existing. That means, it's no longer, this is not a prediction. All right, this is something that is already happening. So what can we do? This is the part here that I want to walk you through. Okay, the uncomfortable part is the facing the reality of certain things, and what are some strategies. As I've mentioned, you all have different financial situations, but previously I said that this is the time, the fortune time right now. Why am I seeing this way? Because all you really need to do is to locate yourself, okay? So find out where in these three segments here: productivity, so your own workforce, corporate earnings, and financial earnings, where you create cash flow, and understand that there's going to be a massive sort of cut in those. So how can you increase your own self-reliance, your own sufficiency, by simply taking control over it? So I don't want to bore you with my own personal opinions this time. I want to share a strategy from Ray Dalio. He's a very popular billionaire here. He's very vocal about these things, and he gives people very sound advice. I'm obviously not a financial advisor. I'm just reporting what he says. He has a 5-point plan for people, and this can apply to you in a smaller or in a larger or a bigger perspective here, depending on how much money you have to deal with. The first advice that he gives to people is to diversify cash. That is something that I told you guys in March. To open up bank account, check if your banks are insured, how much they are insured, and if they only cover a portion of what you what you have in your savings or in your money market accounts. Then you want to either change the bank or open up additional bank accounts. I recommended you guys all to get a PayPal account and a PayPal card, just due to the things that technologically come later. That would be sort of the simplest thing that we can all do, is to hedge, the potential, say, bankruptcy of your own bank. The second thing that he recommends is to diversify, perhaps into different countries. This is not necessarily something that you guys all can do, but if you have dual citizenships or you have a business elsewhere, you want to diversify, meaning like spread things out a bit. Number 3, think about your assets. Okay, so back to where does the cash flow come in? Many of you are relying on real estate, on money market. So real estate and money market are very, very shaky commodities now. Now, if you live in your house and you feel safe there and you love your house, then there's nothing wrong with this. But if you have been following certain schemes, such as flipping houses or things like this is no longer the time for this, because as consumer confidence shrinks, people are no longer interested in buying bigger houses or more houses. It will have the reverse effect, and you're going to see, a drastic decline in residential real estate. What we're already seeing is a drastic decline in commercial real estate. So commercial real estate, from this perspective, from this larger macroeconomic perspective, is really dead at this very moment, because through the lockdowns, the remote work, so many things are changing right now in our societies. There really is no need for more office space, okay? So we see this in New York City, we see this in large cities everywhere, even in the smaller cities here in the United States. So that is something that has to be shifted. But if your cash flow is related to commercial real estate, with 85% of corporate rents defaulting right now, it's a good idea to revise, that kind of strategy. If you don't have commercial real estate, don't worry about it. This can be very interesting for those of you who have a lot of money in a few years, when this empty standing commercial real estate needs to be converted into cheap, probably government funded housing for homeless people, and cheap housing, basically. What else can you do here? Hedge against the dollar. Yes, you can, of course, buy gold and silver. I don't think that this is actually helping you a lot, because it doesn't really create cash flow. Yes, you can sort of vibrate sort of hyperinflation when it comes, but until then you still have a little bit of time. Plus, precious metals, for instance, are very difficult to obtain right now. So will there be a gain there? Yes, but I don't think it will be that big I mean, I have gold, all right, but I don't think that it will be that big. So what is much more interesting here, and this is also pointing at how this is going to go here in the future, is Ray Dalio's tip number 4, namely investing in cash flow driven businesses. Now, probably one of the things that we're going to be seeing here over the next year and two is a massive redistribution of ownership of businesses, where people have basically taken too much debt, companies, but the companies are actually good, but the owners can't really fulfill their obligations anymore. So what we're going to see here, and I've been recommending this to many of you guys already for a couple of years, namely to invest in future technologies, in future-driven, cash flow-driven also businesses, and businesses that serve the needs that the communities and that the people will have in the future. So that is something that for those of you who have to get rid of a lot of money, that I would strongly talk to your financial advisor about. The fifth tip that Ray Dalio gives everybody is to maximize your credit, to prepare for an acute sort of cash flow shortage. All right, to utilize these extremely low interest rates, and the banks are really loan happy right now. Okay, so this changed here in the last couple of years. To do something like refinancing with a lower fixed rate, or having a little bit of a bolster there, so that you guys don't get pulled into your pure survival fears, okay? Because that is always what makes you react. That is what makes you sort of go low in your energy, and then you don't really see options anymore. And that is then when all your other efforts, to conscious manifestation and so forth, when they falter. This is why they don't work, because when you get pulled into your pure survival fears, all your first chakra fears, when you don't feel safe and you don't feel like you can make it, that's really when your energy shifts into this ego state, into this lower vibratory state. All right, so this just as an overview here for something that I know many of you are really not prepared to face. Now that we are over with this, okay, let's move on to this week and how you can utilize some of this information here on, the physical, emotional, mental, social, spiritual, and energetic level. So the chakra is very active right now here in this week, and you probably are noticing this already, is continued our second and third chakra, especially the barrier between the two, which is the emotional processing. This is why we get pulled into our emotional schisms. Everything that we repressed, everything that we didn't express, that we didn't allow ourselves to feel, everything that we felt guilty for, all the stuff that we did not process is coming into the foreground. It's being triggered. All right. Now, what is unusual here for this particular week is that our fourth chakra, our heart, which can allow us to out-vibrate some of these things and really speak from the heart and act from the heart, is blocked. So this is why I predicted purge type of things this week, because people can no longer hold it in. It's a massive pressure cooker, and our heart isn't really able to go wide with it. Okay, so this is just the uniqueness of this particular constellation right now, and this is the other aspect, an extremely overactive sixth chakra. So guys, there's a lot going on here in the astral plane, and you'll feel this. You will have dreams almost, you'll get downloads, and you'll have a hard time discerning all of this. So I just want to give you a heads up here for this week that comes, that you don't go into taking this all personally and thinking this is just you. The purge. Yeah, so people are really getting pressure cooked right now, and please expect things to happen. Do not be shocked when things happen. They have to happen now energetically, okay? So how can we work with this? How can we translate this physically? Well, first of all, these apocalyptic dreams, these corona dreams, I did a whole truth talk on this. You can watch this just to get the sort of overall energetics of that. But the main energy right now is very inflammatory. And so the best way to translate this in the physical is to go into anti-inflammatory actions and foods. We all need this nourishment right now and this connection because our fourth chakra is blocked. Okay, so translate this into foods. Look at your diet. Really check out what these foods are that can help you to balance your pH, that can help you with more antioxidants. It's good for your immune system, but it's also good for your overall a sort of well-being in your body. Okay, I know many of you have issues with physical motion, with exercise, so that's obviously something that you will continue to have to work out now. Yoga mats are available again. There's a shortage on tennis rackets and bikes right now, but find ways that allow you, to integrate maybe nature and exercise together. Now, besides that, on a physical level, you also really need to feel into your first chakra home situation, whether you feel safe. Personally, I think this is a really, really good time to get a dog, especially a puppy, so that you can really grow together with this dog, train it right. It will make you feel safe, guys. And the beautiful thing about this is, I know not all of you are dog fans, but the needs that dogs have are very similar to our needs. And it creates very good habits, having to walk the dog twice a day or going on long hikes is such a different thing when you do this with a dog companion. Also helps you to connect with your own sort of self-love and self-care. So in that way, maybe try to stay low right now as far as exerting a lot of this fiery energy, because chances are we're hurting other people. If you have conflicts with other people that are long-standing or things that really need to be said, I think it's a very healthy thing to let this out. But from a physical standpoint, it's better right now to focus on eliminating. How can you eliminate these things? Maybe you can write a letter or find a different way of venting some of these stuck energies in your body that for most of you, besides the dreams and maybe some sleeplessness that comes with this, also often translates into stiffness. Emotionally, guys, I've already basically demonstrated to you how you can best work with this overwhelm and with not knowing what to do. With education, you have to really look at what is and analyze your situation. Don't let this fear of the unknown or your guilt or your could haves and should haves, take control over you. Whatever was yesterday is no longer. All right, so let go of all the things that you are still holding on to. Okay, you have to really be in the present right now and look forward. And the best way to do this, without going, being too short fused, being too anxious or too depressed, or going into your self-sabotage coping stuff, or withholding is a big one right now, emotionally withholding, because it's too tough for us to deal with our emotions, and our fourth chakra is a little blocked. So don't do these things. Don't think that you're the only one who is lonely and so forth. Don't buy into this. So deal with your emotions. All emotions are just emotions. And they're signals from your inner self trying to tell you something, trying to tell you what works and what doesn't work, and where you have to learn and where you have to grow. And this also means, to be willing to become more emotionally mature. And how do we do this? By working with it, by increasing our emotional vocabulary, our literacy. So most of you are already received the invitation for the Friday night workshop for emotional processing, and there is also another workshop recording available for you. I'll put this here in the links, about emotional maturity. Mentally, not being able to make sense can drive us into very erratic behavior. So we got to be careful here. I've mentioned this before. The unconscious sabotage, the coping mechanisms, that's something we really need to pay attention to. There's a lot of this misunderstanding, miscommunication right now, be it that you've exploded because you couldn't hold it anymore, or because you feel like you've had enough. You've got to pay attention to where your energy is at the time, because if you've allowed your energy to go into this place where your perception gets limited, and with it the options, okay, we tend to project things onto people or to externalize them. So you're gonna have to make a bit effort here mentally to understand yourself better. All right, to look at your own true intentions, your own hidden agenda. This is what we've been working on here in these last 2 weeks. My tip for you is name it. Say it out loud or write it down, okay? When you can name it, you can better tackle it. Now, socially, better understanding ourselves also includes making an effort to better understand the other. All right, to understand where some of these communicational things that we do, and I can see that many of you are withholding right now, which means you go sort of in this pouty place, or you feel victimized, or you feel betrayed or jealous. All right, and that is sabotage, guys. All right, because you're not going to be able to resolve misunderstandings or maybe unrealistic expectations. You're going to have to go into this exchange and begin to find similarities where you could only find, say, contradictions. Okay, when it's in a relationship, stop focusing on the things that you hate about your partner or that you want him to do differently, or her. Focus on the things that are actually really good, that are working really well, and how you can utilize this, to maybe it's as simple as just spending more time together, or sort of renegotiating a roadmap here for your future, financial planning together. All these things, it's really, really good time for doing this. Now, when you have kids, obviously you're going to have to be a bit more creative here, and there are some things, that I've done here in these last 2 weeks with my son. He has a YouTube channel now. Then I've integrated my daughter into the business. I've done, started writing a book with my son and with Jeff together. We're doing stuffed animal story times, and I've sewed costumes for those teddy bears and so forth. It is not important what the outcome is. What is important is that you make an effort, to understand what your needs are and the other person's needs, and how to balance that, how to bring that into harmony. Now, spiritually, guys, and I'm going to do a truth talk here about this subject on Sunday. We are in the middle of spiritual warfare, and that is nothing new, okay? For many of you, this is quite real for a long time, because as your perception increases, you begin to see things differently. And this isn't about, how you see this in the movies, but this is about really what are these dark forces, what are these forces of light, and how am I aligning to either one of them? We already know that all ego states align you to dark energies and make you susceptible to them as well. So this hyperactivity of our sixth chakra, of our third eye right now, guys, makes you susceptible to things. It makes you susceptible to absorbing other people's energies, but it also makes you susceptible to fears. And there's a lot of entities out there that are fear-driven, that feed off your fear, that feed off your, this emotional schism. Okay, so this is something that I can really only address individually. So if you have questions or need to discuss this, if you're a heart warrior, then we get to talk about this in your regular coaching sessions. But if you're a Patreon subscriber and you have questions about this, please email me. It's really about educating yourself on some of this interplay. Okay, what this is really here all about, and what our role as humans, okay, these souls in these immortal souls and mortal bodies, what our role is in all of this. Okay, so that is a very complex matter that I don't want to scare you with, but I want you to understand that there are, when you like we did for finances, we went from the microeconomics, your personal your budget, to macroeconomics, how do entire economies and countries function. If you go a step further and you look at, okay, so how does this whole sort of energy factory here in the multidimensional realm functions, then you'll recognize that there is always another layer to this. And those of you who are feeling tormented right now, you need help, okay? Because that is what all this truth training really is about, for you to learn that you have a choice and that you can shift your energy. And there's a lot of videos out there, guys, that I've produced to help you with these things, even when, you can't talk to someone like me, or, who's specialized on these things. But you really got to take this seriously, okay? This is not just sort of new age blah blah. All right, so energetically, the best tip I can give to you is reduce your stress right now. Eliminate all the things that really stress you, people where you've noticed that you're absorbing a lot of energies, jobs, ways of making money that really sort of limit you or contract you. This is the time for advanced energy management, guys. Actually, energy conservation. This is really what energy management means. And for many of us, this means downsizing, letting go of all the things that we used to believe in, okay, all the externalized stuff. This will no longer have any significance for you here in the future, when you really have to decide, how to come up with creative solutions. Now, those of you who can see the entrepreneurial value in times like this, for you is a fantastic time. And I want to announce here that there's big changes ahead here for transCODES. There's a rebranding of transCODES and an actual physical community-based a project that I'm going to announce crowdfunding for. It's for urban farming, for teaching people how to grow foods and how to produce foods. There's a lot of big stuff behind that. So over time, we'll integrate the crypto technology into this. But the main thing right now is to be of service for people, for communities and corporations, to come up with innovative and future concepts here that can help not just them, but also their communities and the people around them. Okay, so yeah, very, very exciting. It's a very, very good time to look into the future. So use your overactive third eye perceptivity right now into piercing through your own fears. Okay, the fact that you feel bombarded and that you see these apocalyptic things doesn't mean that it has to be that way. It's not always precognitive in that way. But what it is informing you about, your energy is informing you about something, that is that, the world, sort of how you relied on it, how you thought it was, okay, that is changing right now. And all that matters is how you position yourself right now and how willing you are to really work with this. That, as I have already laid out in the July forecast, that July is a month where problems really tend to compound. It's a very compressed time right now, so bear with me here. Use the comments in the YouTube video. The energy tips are not public, with a few exceptions. They are now just accessible for you, or use the comments in the Patreon community if you want me to stop talking about these things, all right? Because I cannot tell you guys certain things without running into my own inner truth detector, okay? So I have to feel balanced with this. But if you wish me to just show you how you can optimize yourself, then I can leave the reality check out. Okay, so please let me know, give me feedback. All right, love you guys. I thank you for your support, and I see you very soon. Bye bye.